I was standing in my living room, champagne flute in hand, surrounded by the laughter and chatter of friends and distant relatives. My birthday cake glimmered with candles, the golden flames reflecting off the crystal chandelier, and for a brief moment, I felt normal, safe, celebrated. Then, I saw her, my son's wife, Lauren, smirking from across the room, a chill creeping up my spine before I even registered the words. "Pack your bags, Samantha. You have 24 hours." The room blurred. The notes of my favorite jazz song seemed muffled. My hand tightened around the stem of my glass, feeling the smooth coolness of the crystal against my palm. I wanted to laugh, but my chest was tight, a knot of disbelief and hurt.
How dare she?
At my birthday? I forced a smile, keeping my voice steady, but inside, a storm was brewing. Every memory of being dismissed, overlooked, or judged by people I once trusted flashed before me like a painful slideshow. Pride, anger, and a flicker of irony tangled together. All I wanted was a normal evening, and here she was, throwing a gauntlet at my feet. I looked around at the familiar faces, trying to gauge if anyone else had noticed. Some were smiling awkwardly, others pretending not to hear. And in that instant, I realized I wasn't just a mother being humiliated. I was a woman with a life, a voice, a story they had never bothered to see. And they were about to. I remember the first time I truly felt invisible in my own family. I was 24, fresh out of college, my degree in marketing clutched in my hands like a promise to myself. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to start a business, to create something that mattered, and to feel seen. But my parents, bless them, had a different idea. "You need to think about stability, Sam," my mother said, folding laundry in the sunlit kitchen. "A steady job, someone to take care of you, don't get ahead of yourself." Her words weren't unkind, but they were heavy with doubt. My father didn't say much, just a nod, the kind that told me my ambitions were amusing, maybe even foolish. And then there was the fight with Lauren. Even back then, she had that sharpness in her voice, the way she could cut through a room like a knife. She was just a girl I thought would be my daughter-in-law someday, but even then, there was tension. "You'll never keep up," she said dismissively. I felt my hands shake, my chest tighten. The sting of her words wasn't just about me, it was about everything I was building, everything I wanted to become. It was during one of those nights, sitting alone on my grandmother's porch, that she handed me a small, leather-bound journal. "Your worth isn't measured by what they see," she said softly, her eyes twinkling with quiet certainty. "It's in the courage to keep going, even when they doubt you. Write it down. Remember it. One day, they'll wish they noticed." I held that journal like a lifeline. Each page I filled became a stepping stone, a declaration that my life would not be dictated by anyone's approval. I didn't know exactly how I would do it, but I knew this. I would rise, even if I had to rise alone. That night, under the stars, I made a silent vow. No more hiding. No more apologies for wanting more. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I felt the spark of my own independence. After that night on my grandmother's porch, I began quietly reshaping my life. I moved to a small apartment downtown, one that barely had enough space for my desk and the little collection of books I'd brought from home. But it was mine. Every morning, I brewed a strong cup of coffee, the aroma filling the tiny kitchen, and I reminded myself, this is the start of something real. I found work at a modest marketing firm, far from glamorous, far from what I had dreamed. My first weeks were grueling. I was the youngest woman in the office, and every minor mistake felt magnified. I remember spilling coffee on an important client folder and wanting to sink into the floor. But I didn't quit. I stayed, learned, observed, and absorbed every lesson like a sponge. It was during one late night, hunched over my laptop with the glow of the city lights streaming through my window, that I met Laura Whitman, a senior marketing consultant who saw more in me than I even saw in myself. She became my mentor, guiding me through the labyrinth of corporate politics, teaching me how to pitch ideas, negotiate contracts, and, most importantly, believe in my worth. "Success isn't flashy," she told me one evening, pushing a folder of my first completed project across the table. It's steady, consistent, and unapologetically yours. I threw myself into the work. There were nights I cried from exhaustion, days I doubted my choices, but slowly, the small victories began to appear. My first client that actually paid more than I expected. The first campaign I led that exceeded its targets. I saved every dollar, every compliment, every hard-earned inch of respect. I learned to navigate obstacles, to turn setbacks into strategies, and to wear confidence like armor, even when I didn't feel it inside. All the while, I kept my family in the dark. Birthday cards from them went unanswered, phone calls were brief and polite, and social media was a carefully curated illusion of normalcy. I didn't need their approval, and I wasn't ready for confrontation. What mattered was that I was building a life that was mine, quietly but firmly. And then, a year later, I signed the contract that marked my first real financial independence, my own small marketing consultancy. I still remember the moment I held the papers in my hand, the late afternoon sun catching the gold lettering on the envelope. I whispered to myself, half in disbelief, half in triumph, "They'll see me someday." But only when I choose to show up on my terms. It was a long journey, filled with sacrifice, self-doubt, and lonely nights. But every step, every small win, every sleepless night stitched together the woman I was becoming, not the one they expected, not the one they could ever dismiss again. The day arrived. My son's wife, Lauren, had insisted on bringing the family over for a heart-to-heart at my birthday party, clearly expecting to see a frazzled, struggling mother who might crumble under pressure. What they got instead was a living testament to resilience. The moment they stepped into my apartment, I could see it. The subtle widening of eyes, the tiny stutter in Lauren's step, the awkward shuffle of my son as he avoided looking me directly in the eyes. I had prepared for this moment not with anger, but with poise. The apartment reflected my journey. The walls adorned with art I had collected from small exhibitions, my sleek oak desk holding neatly arranged awards from my consultancy, shelves lined with books I had poured myself into. It wasn't ostentatious. It was me. My world, earned and meticulously built. I offered them coffee, my tone calm, even light. Lauren raised an eyebrow but said nothing. My son mumbled a greeting, clearly uncomfortable. I motioned for them to sit, letting silence do part of the work. Silence is a powerful mirror, I had learned. It reflects your assumptions back at you. Finally, I spoke. "I think it's time you understood a few things." I began, keeping my voice smooth, conversational, yet deliberate. "This isn't just about a birthday or a party. It's about respect and the choices we make in life. Choices I made, without your approval." I watched their expressions shift, a mixture of confusion and unease. I gestured toward my desk. "This company? I started it a year ago. I have 7 full-time employees, multiple high-profile clients, and an annual revenue that allows me complete independence. I didn't tell you because it wasn't your story to know. And now, here you are, telling me to pack my bags, expecting fear or obedience. Instead, I offer clarity." Lauren's lips parted in shock. My son's face paled, guilt flashing across his features. I continued, letting each word land like a gentle but firm hammer. "I am not the same woman you dismissed, underestimated, or thought you could control. I am financially independent. I am professionally accomplished. I am not leaving, not because I can't, but because I choose to stay on my terms." The room was silent. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed muted. Lauren finally spoke, her voice faltering. "But we thought." "You thought wrong," I interrupted gently, but with steel beneath the softness. "You assumed my worth is tied to your comfort, your perception, or my place in your narrative. It's not, and it never was." I could see the shame creep into their eyes, the realization of how completely they had misjudged me. There was no anger in my tone now, just the quiet power of someone who had endured, persevered, and emerged whole. They had expected vulnerability, and they found strength. They had expected compliance, and they found autonomy. I leaned back, sipping my coffee, letting the weight of truth settle around us. "I am Samantha Hayes," I said finally, letting the name resonate. "Not just a mother, not just your family's expectation. I am my own person, and nothing you say will change that." The disbelief in their faces was palpable. Lauren's smirk was gone, replaced by a hollow, uneasy acknowledgement. My son, finally meeting my eyes, seemed to understand. Not fully, but enough to respect that the woman they thought they knew had transformed into someone entirely untouchable by their judgment. After the initial shock, I realized it was time to make my boundaries clear. This wasn't about revenge. It was about establishing respect and ensuring that the past patterns wouldn't repeat. I could see it in my son's hesitant stance, Lauren's nervous fidgeting, the quiet tension hanging over the room. The power dynamic had shifted, and now I would define the terms. "I'm willing to continue having all of you in my life," I said calmly, letting my words hang in the air. "But things need to change. For each of us, starting now." I turned first to Lauren. "You will treat me and everyone in this family with respect. That includes listening, not controlling, and never assuming that anyone's worth is tied to your convenience or comfort. You will apologize for your behavior today, sincerely, and you will commit to supporting your husband, not manipulating him." Lauren's jaw tightened, but she nodded, clearly swallowing her pride. "Then, my son, you will stop undermining yourself and me. It's time to set boundaries, not just for me, but for your marriage. Respect is reciprocal. If you want a healthy relationship with me, start by listening to me as an equal, not a caretaker or messenger for your wife's whims." I could see the guilt in his eyes, but also relief. Finally, clarity. I stood slowly, letting my presence fill the room. "And for myself," I continued, my voice softening slightly, "I will continue to pursue my life, my career, and my dreams without compromise. I will not shrink to make anyone else comfortable, and I will not apologize for being successful." The conditions were clear, firm, and fair. I wanted them to understand that respect, growth, and self-awareness weren't punishments. They were opportunities for healing. If they chose to embrace them, our relationships could thrive. If not, the door was always open for them to leave. But I knew, deep down, that most of them would rise to the challenge, because when people see someone they've underestimated truly shine, it inspires change. I paused, noticing the subtle shifts, Lauren's tense shoulders relaxing, my son drawing in a deep, steadying breath. They weren't perfect yet, but for the first time, they were seeing me as whole, powerful, and unafraid. I wasn't just a mother to them anymore. I was a woman who had claimed her life, and they had to respect that. Finally, I added, almost to myself, but loud enough for them to hear, "This isn't punishment. This is growth. This is the life we should all want. One where love, respect, and ambition can coexist. But it starts here, with honesty, with boundaries, and with the courage to change." I could feel the energy shift. The room, once heavy with tension, now carried a sense of possibility. I had not just survived their judgment. I had transformed it into a lesson for all of us. The game had changed, and I was the one who wrote the rules. The days and weeks that followed were quieter, gentler, yet filled with a new rhythm. I watched my family begin to adjust, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Lauren made small gestures, a sincere compliment here, an apology there, a conscious effort to respect boundaries she had once ignored. My son started asserting himself, finally shedding the guilt and hesitation that had weighed him down for years. They were learning, growing, and in a way, I was healing alongside them. I took a quiet moment one morning on my balcony, the city stretching endlessly before me, sunlight glinting off the glass buildings. In my hand, I held the leather-bound journal my grandmother had given me years ago. Its pages were worn and filled with my rawest thoughts, my triumphs, my fears. I ran my fingers over the faded words. "Your worth is not in their approval. It's in your courage." I realized then how far I had come. The hurt I once carried, the dismissals, the silent rejections, they had shaped me, but they no longer controlled me. I had built a life that was fully my own, a life I could step into with confidence and pride. I had transformed pain into power, fear into independence, and judgment into clarity. Even my birthday celebration, once a stage for humiliation, had become a moment of quiet victory. I laughed genuinely with friends, toasted to achievements, and felt a sense of peace that no one could take away. The relationships that remained in my life were now rooted in honesty, respect, and mutual growth, not obligation, expectation, or old family hierarchies. And so, as I closed the journal and looked out at the horizon, I whispered to myself, the words carrying both triumph and grace. I came for love, stayed for dignity, and left only when they could finally see me. In that single, resonant truth, I found the strength to keep moving forward. Not as the mother they expected, not as the woman they once dismissed, but as Samantha Hayes, whole, unshakable, and unapologetically herself.